Welcome to Raven Talk, the official podcast of the Raven Tribe. Today's episode features an interview with Master Peter Brusso of Anjing Banfa. Master Brusso is a recognized blade instructor at the master level. This interview was originally meant to be transcribed for inclusion in an upcoming volume of the Twin Ravens publishing series, Masters of the Blade. I enjoyed the interview so much that I decided to post it for all to enjoy. If you enjoyed this interview and would like to read more interviews with modern blade masters, please go and check out our series, Masters of the Blade from Twin Raven Publishing, available at raventactical.com. What is the name of your art?
The name of my art is Anjing Banfa.
What does that mean?
It means quiet heart. Patient heart, it means patient spirit, actually, basically, in the Japanese translation.
And how do your students address you?
Sensei.
How do they address you? Is Sensei or Peter? Or...
That's it. Nope, Sensei, never Peter.
Okay. And what initially drew you to the edge weapon arts?
Oh, well, I was in the military, basically. And even before that, I had a splattering of, the same thing everybody else does, is weapons disarms that probably don't work in the bigger picture. But given the military and where I went and everything was up close and quiet, typically. So it was more blade-oriented than projectile-oriented, like a gun, etc.
In what edge weapon arts are you formally credentialed, and by whom?
Well, only me. Oddly enough, I guess that's true. I mean, clearly I have an Arnis background too, and that was originally a machete, but everybody thinks they're sticks. But so I do have rank in Arnis as well. And of course in ninjutsu there's awful lot of blade stuff, and I have rank and title in ninjutsu as well.
And who did you train Arnis and ninjutsu under?
Arnis was a gentleman by the name of Fred Selikup. And in ninjutsu, initially it was Jun Nakabayashi Sensei, then that went to Bussy Sensei, and then ultimately Blackwood Sensei, and then ultimately Master Martin, Ed Martin, and currently with Master Jeff Prather.
And who among your instructors most influenced you, and why?
That's a good question. I guess Ed Sensei impressed me the most because he was very open to new ways of doing things. In Anjing Banfa, we don't do anything which is normal to everybody else. And he was certainly open for that, and I'm more a heads person, a tactics and strategy person than just punch and kick and learn a kata. So I'm a thinking warrior, not a rote warrior. So he was more open for that, for sure.
And what is the history of your art in terms of edge weapons?
Well, again, pre-army in Hapkido, there was a little splattering there, not much, just more or less takeaways. And then in the military, of course, we got spun up in knife fighting when I was chosen to go overseas, and then we studied with the Negritos briefly in the Philippines at BI, and then just literally got dropped into Cambodia, where 32 of us went in and 4 came back out alive 10 months later. And most of it was up close and personal. And so the training that was received, I'm sure it was a hodgepodge of stuff along the way, much like the Marine Corps martial arts are today, but put into practice up close and personal. So then you just start to change things as you're required. And when I came out of there, then I never expected actually to be teaching knife fighting or knife throwing and edged weapons and all the crazy stuff that I do. I never expected in my life to ever come out and do that, but that's kind of sort of what happened.
And would you consider your art to be a pure art or a blended method?
Oh, it's certainly blended, no question. But it's blended around what works and what doesn't work. And I say that in all respect, but some systems are 19 steps later, you get your end result. And having been in combat, if it's not simple, it's not going to work. And a lot of arts, just can do anything they want out on the map there, and that's not going to work in the real world. So I felt like when I came back, I had no place to go home to, basically. I kind of hung up everything and went off to be an engineer and was at a facility, a very prestigious facility, when they asked me if I would take over the martial arts club. Most of them were hard stylists, and I looked at that and go, well, I'm so different than that. You guys have to be willing to really unlearn what you think you've learned. And they did. And so that kind of got started, and then I introduced knife on knife fighting there officially. And it was very clear what I was teaching was not a martial art, it was killing art. And that proceeded with me all the way into the mini dojos that I've owned in LA and whatnot, when there's a certain place in your training when you realize this is not self-defense. This is something a little bit different. And the guys joke about that, by the way. That's why I mentioned that.
Okay. And of the different edge weapons that you train, which one do you primarily specialize in?
Knife. Yeah.
And what
knife is it.
What additional edge weapons do you teach in Anjing Banfa?
Well, we teach all kinds of stuff, from axes to shovels to most of the ninja weapons we teach, from the Naginata to the Dakahatsugama, Kyoketsu Shogi. Those are blended weapons, too, in their own right. Weapons of opportunity, whether it's a bottle or otherwise. So I even give classes on, you have 20 minutes to run outside and make a weapon, come back and tell me how you'd use it, type thing. So it's more a strategy. But knife on knife is certainly, we teach machete too quite a bit. We do a lot of machete fighting. Katana, we don't fight too much with katanas, but we do fight a lot with machetes and knives.
And does the art specialize in any particular range of combat?
Close and personal, typically. Yeah.
And does the art specialize in any specific type of techniques?
Ones that work quickly. It's a funny question. But we're very, in knife fighting, for example, historically, you'll see people with arterial systems where they're attacking basically the arteries of the body there, and then there are other ones that will attack just mainly solid blood organs. Well, we kind of blended all of that together, but the strikes and how you hold your knife are different in those particular cases. We teach the anatomy and physiology of a body very well, so when you hit a target what's going to happen. The first time I cut across somebody low in their stomach area, it empties the contents of their intestines out. Nobody ever told me that, and it was pretty brutal, pretty gross. So you have to. I swore at that moment that if I ever teach this stuff forward, I'm going to make sure the guys know and girls know what to expect when you hit certain targets. And so we depending upon the blade they like to carry, blades are specific, and we also pay a good amount of attention, like I always talk about, what is a good blade? And the first requirement for a good blade is that you can hang on to it when it's wet. Because if you can't hang on to it, it's no good to you. You're going to lose it. And I showed you that specialized blade the other day. Sent you some pictures of that. It's got a G10 handle that actually gets sticky when it gets wet. The other things are that serrations are absolutely necessary if you're going to attack the thoracic cavity at all. So many blades are made without any serrations at all. They think it's to cut out seatbelts. No, it's to cut a relief groove between ribs so you can get your blade back up. Because I've actually got my blade stuck in somebody in war. I just kicked it on through and lost it. But and these are the things you learn that, you know. And so next knife I got my hands on it, they my own serrations. So serrations aren't for just cutting seatbelts out, like they were very popular in the mid-70s, I guess, in the EMT world, the ambulance world. But no, and then talon-shaped blades are specifically used to go after arterial blood systems, and they're not good for stabbing. They're not going that good for solid blood organs. So the same is true with a straight blade. It's very good for poking solid blood organs, but it's kind of not the best efficient thing to use when you're trying to cut arteries and bleed people out. So it's a combination of the two types of blades that ultimately runs out in the end. And so in my class, which I have on the web, you've taken it, I'm sure, you know, the knife fighting class, it's pretty darn brutal. And but it starts out with the anatomy of a good blade and what does all that mean for the fighter. And I see people pick what I believe is the stupidest blades in the world, and they just think they're the experts. And you can take one look at that blade and say, these people have never killed anybody in their life and had to live with it. And I mean, even people that do the saber method of holding a blade, that's dumb. That's really dumb. Because it gets knocked out of your hands very easily. You got an opposing thumb for a reason. Use it. And then learn to index your handle so you know which way the blade is pointing, and you never have to look at it. Things like that, you know, that escape a lot of these people's purview. You know, they don't understand. So I forget what the original question was, but basically, there you go.
And is sparring or competition an aspect of the training that you do with blades?
Oh, yeah. We split everything up into 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3. So you have 1/3 belt level material, for example, whatever it may be, whether it's a Hombo class or anti-grab class or takedown class, whatever it is. And we have 1/3 of what we call Core Plus, which is now I can teach you anything I want to teach you, or the instructor can. That may or may not be in our system. It may be, you know, how to make weapons, the strategy behind weapons, rotational weapons versus linear weapons. And then the other 1/3 is fighting. And we fight empty-handed, we fight armed, we fight against guns. About 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. If you had an hour class, it's 20, 20, 20. And yeah, that's what we do.
Are there any training methodologies which you feel are unique to your art?
Yeah, we start out with what is called quick kills. These are, you know, block stab, block cut type of things. And so it gets them in the mindset, you know, a knife fight shouldn't last more than, at the longest, about 3 seconds. It should bing, bang, boom, they're done. And you get that precise in hitting your targets. And some targets you don't have to be very precise on at all, but as long as you can hit close to it, you're good to go. And so, yeah, we do these quick kills. We also throw knives a lot. And people say, why the heck would you throw a knife? Well, there's a lot of good reasons for throwing knives. Particularly if you're outgunned, literally if there's 2 attackers and you took 1 person down, or 3 attackers and took 1 down, and the other two are too far away. They're past the 21-foot rule. They're pulling out their gun, which is a long-range weapon. Your only hope at all is to distract them in some fashion. So by throwing your knife at them, the knife is stuck, not a requirement, but you're like the divine wind right in behind it. And as you close on the target, they're more worried about getting out of the way of that knife and not worried about you until you hit them. Take your hands on them, disarm them, whatever. So there are lots of good reasons to throw your knives. And we practice a no throw, a half spin, and a full spin type throw. Those are distance issues typically. And I think that's about what we try to do, is to focus in on quick kills, and we'll all warm up with quick kills. There's about 12 to 15 of those, so you can vary them around so people don't get bored, and then go into whatever the knife fighting sequence you wanted to go after.
What do you feel is the strength of your edge weapons curriculum?
Realism. You're creating a thinking warrior, which is extremely dangerous. Not a rote warrior. You're not going to learn things by a kata. And you're going to always, matter of fact, day one in my art, you're across from an opponent the whole time. Because that's what you're training for, not to win trophies in kata. And that's not to say that kata isn't valuable to a lot of arts. It just has no meaning for us, minus some sword katas that we work with just to get people used to a little longer blade, and historical, yeah.
And is your blade work designed to be used against a similar weapon or dissimilar weapons?
It doesn't matter. It's used against the opponent. Whether they're armed or unarmed doesn't matter.
And do you train mixed weapon scenarios, like knife versus stick?
Yes, just like I said earlier, we have our fighting regime. We'll go against a gun, for example, or stick, weapons of opportunities. You're empty-handed, or you recover something, and how to use it, how to clear it, how to make sure it is usable, whether it's a tap, slap, and rack method. So you're teaching them about these types of things. And clearly, I'm the father of the defender, and so utilizing a defender system against edged weapons and projectile weapons and sticks and everything else is very, very important to understand how you utilize that against those tools. The answer is yes. We go machete and empty-handed, which is ugly as hell, or heck, if you're going to have this on a podcast. Sorry, it's ugly as heck. You can do a cut there, but and we take real machetes and we safe them. Up on my Warriors Way site, there's a whole class on how to safe your machete. And then two people are using machete against machete with the real weapons of the real weight and everything. It's not a cardboard cutout or a wood cutout, because the rotational dynamics are completely different when you add weight to it. The same thing you see when people always train with wooden guns or red or blue guns. Red or blue guns get a lot closer to the real thing, but we like to train with the real thing. The heaviness of it, a lot of times with a blue or red gun, you will hit the magazine ejector, but nothing happens. But with a real weapon, you just dropped all your ammo into the dirt, and then you're clearing that weapon to make sure you got another round to go in there. And oops, now you have an empty weapon, which, by the way, looks like a very, very spun up defender. And we actually teach with M16s or M4s, carbines, how to utilize it like a defender, particularly the front sight, and also something that a lot of people I've never seen taught anywhere else is how to use your strap on your weapon as a device to take hostages, captive people, move them around, and how to manipulate them via a sling, basically, and what that sling can really do for you. So.
And to clarify for the reader, what is a defender?
Oh, it's a little piece of plastic. It's the meanest darn thing you've ever seen. Of course, you have them. I think you loved them, and from the very beginning, they give you a wide range of opportunity to either black to white gives you a lot of gray space in there to maneuver a person if they're pain compliant at all. A defender is in its element, and if not, then you have to remove structure, which it can do quite nicely as well. Structure and function from the attacker to degrade their ability to hurt you. So they're little pieces of plastic that have, they look funny, and each one gets a little bit more aggressive in the product line, from digit capturing, a hole that you get their finger in, and to your normal standard martial arts locks and counters or whatever, joint locks, for example, and it just allows you to have a non-compressible surface from which to work from, which is amazing. And also the only other way out of a digit capture grab is literally for them to amputate their own digit. That's how solidly you got a hold of them. So all the way to ones that have gone to war, and certain units actually prefer certain versions for certain reasons. That's why we have 11 different versions of it. And now we have the mission-specific versions, which are really, really cool. So if you know you're heading a certain way, you get not only the tools, but you get the clips and the neck rigs and friction tape, put in the right places so you're not going to lose it when it gets wet. Kind of goes back to that on a knife thing. If you can't hold on to it when it gets wet, and wet, of course, means blood typically, but it doesn't have to be. It can be mud, rain, whatever. Oils. If you had a fight in a restaurant where oil was being served on the table and you get it on your blade, can you hold on to the darn thing? So anyway, those are what defenders are. A little plastic tool that really is surprising. The other really neat thing about the defenders is that people don't know what they are. And so even if it's taken away from you, they don't know how to use it. Unlike a knife or a gun, they all intuitively know how to use that from probably the age of 4, watching cartoons and other things, So, yeah, that's a defender.
Some arts focus on sparring, others on drills, others on kata or two-man routines. What would you say the main training methodologies are in Nanjing Banfa?
Freestyle fighting, more than anything. You've got to give them something to fight with. So our quick kills would be analogous to a drill. And so you get them, block, strike, kind of block target, So no matter how that blade is coming at you, how they're coming at you, you're going to either use an arterial attack or a solid blood organ attack. And sometimes it depends on the knife. I mean, if you recover an attacker's knife in its talon, you can't stab arterial organs very well with a talon. It just doesn't work very efficiently for that at all. So you realize you've got an arterial weapon, so go for it. Those brachial arteries, femoral arteries, carotid arteries, those are your 6 basic targets right then and there. So we spend an awful lot of time in that freestyle mode than just rope memorization.
On average, how many hours a week does the average student put into blade training?
That would be up to the sensei type. Everybody loves the blade stuff, and it's almost hard to get them out of it. You'd rather take them another direction, believe it or not. And but it's a primary thing. Matter of fact, the Marines didn't used to carry pocket knives. At least the head of the Marine Corps Martial Arts program never carried a pocket knife till he met me. And he learned very quickly that how good it is to have a pocket knife, so to speak. And when the two UFC champion fighters went to the MACE, Marine Corps Martial Arts Center of Excellence, up on YouTube, you can find it there. Their last encounter was supposedly empty-handed ground, and they thought they were in their element when, in fact, the Marines started to lose. They transitioned to their pocket knife equivalent and stabbed them in the throat. And they protested, "Oh, you're not supposed to have a knife yet. Tell that to the person on the battlefield." You know? So, there's a huge mindset difference between us and about everybody else. I mean, even with the Marines, we train in multiple attacker sequences, and you don't pass between two attackers. And that UFC guys, they only fight one at a time, so they've never been trained for that. And one of them passed between two Marines that had what we call a mokuju, which is a wooden gun. I used to tease him about it all the time, which is a wooden gun. It's a bayonet trainer, basically. And he got stabbed in the front, he got stabbed in the back multiple times, and then continued on to try to fight these people. Well, that war is over. You never cross between two people like that. You always get out of the circle, and you force them to come at you. And there's only 2.5 people can attack you at any one time if you're outside the circle. And same thing with wall techniques. I'm probably the only person I've ever seen that teaches fighting off a wall or a corner, which is a great advantage. Most artists would say, never get put up against the wall. And I'm saying, no, the wall is a great advantage for you over them, big time. And the corner is even better. So, I forget what the question was. So it happens when you get old like me, but...
Okay. Peter, do you teach and practice strategies for avoiding contentious encounters?
Oh, of course. Yeah, no, that's square one. There's 4 laws that happen for you to be a victim of violence, and we go through those 4 stages or 4 laws, just like we do weapons disarms. There's 4 stages of weapons disarms, and you end up memorizing them, so to speak, and living amongst them, and learning how to counter whatever level you find yourself into, to counter it appropriately. And so we hope to never have a fight. But that, when you have to have a fight, you've kind of gone through your whole laundry list of other stuff first, and it didn't work. There are some people who are just want to fight. They'll hurt you, no matter what you do.
Do you include a formalized component of unarmed versus the blade in your art?
Can you be more specific?
Do you have empty hand self-defense techniques against knives?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah, against everything. Yes. Absolutely.
And I've spoken to a few different interviewees during this project. Some pressure test their work. Others have done it in real life and have faith in the techniques because of their experience. And even others have said that they don't teach unarmed against the knife because they don't feel there's any techniques that are viable against a blade. What do you feel about that?
Oh, that's a ludicrous statement. That's somebody that doesn't know how to do things. But a knife is going to be probably one of your more serious fights. And it isn't always, the grab the hand, do the disarm because they're so quick. And that's probably what these guys are referring to. Sometimes these attackers are so quick, and that's fine. Punching and blocking can be very quick as well. And so why don't you punch or block and punch, or block and disable their ability to wield that knife at you anymore, like take an eyeball out. Excuse me. And, I wouldn't leave any martial artist without some ability to block and strike an eye, or block and break a knee. And say that there's no viable technique, because that's just not true. A guy pulls out a knife, do you just let him stab you to death? I hope not. That's what it sounds like they're saying.
And do you have a carry strategy for civilians or for police or military operators, or is the training just for the sake of the art?
Can you be more specific?
Some arts advocate carrying like center index on your waistband. Other arts will teach you to carry your knife on your pocket or in a certain type of rig. Do you have any specific recommendations, or is that kind of left up to each individual student?
I think it's left up to the operator typically, but basically the things you want to be able to do is to get to the darn thing. Don't put a little 3M fix-all pocket knife in the bottom of your pocket with all the change and everything else on top of it and think that it's going to do you any good. No, it's got to be accessible for sure. And we have neck rigs. I like neck rigs a lot. Kydex holsters on web gear or your web belt or regular belt even in some cases. I guess the answer is yes to that question, but I do have specifics, but we have a breakaway lanyard system as well. But with all of that, from an engineering standpoint, you have to make sure that your quick deployment mechanism doesn't get accidentally quick deployed before you're ready. So there's a lot of engineering that has to go into that and whatnot before you recommend a certain thing. And that's about what I'd say about that.
Is your art culturally relevant to modern day self-defense needs?
Oh, I think we're probably ultra out there in front. Yeah, absolutely. We almost borderline on, I hate to use the word, but preppers. We teach people from day one how to get situational awareness. That's the biggest thing you can ever teach in martial arts. It's the number one thing that people don't know about, and they don't teach it. We teach it from the moment you step in the school. And situational awareness is in fact the thing that's going to save you or kill you. Everything else comes from that. And I've talked to the guys and brought experts in on various different types of things. And because we're so crossed with the ninjas too, our weaponry is so much different in ninjutsu. They're not fluent in a lot of that, but they understand the two weapon systems, whether it's linear or rotational weapon system. Remember at the start of this interview, we talked about what we've got to do is create a thinking warrior. A lot of people will criticize that if you have to think you're already dead. That's not true at all. The mind speeds up during a fight or slows down, depends on how you look at it. You have plenty of time to watch an opponent. You're obviously watching them when they first get engaged with you in any fashion, whether they're walking up or otherwise, whether they're a right-handed shooter or a left-handed shooter, is a very big thing, because they're also going to be a right-handed draw or a left-handed draw on a knife. So you want to start analyzing them before they're even close enough to you to do anything. So we're making thinking warriors out of people.
And Peter, have you ever had to use your art for self-defense?
Well, of course. Yes. In war, absolutely. No question about that. And coming back, I've been attacked a number of times. But then again, I was fighting so much too, from the school standpoint, freestyle fighting. Shoot, I fought knockout kickboxers at the time, and they went down quick, and just a bunch of stuff because we don't have any rules. In UFC, you can't attack a knee, you can't attack a groin, you can't poke out an eyeball and eat it for psychological impact. As you might put in there, of course, George Clooney plays me in the Men Who Stare at Goats movie, and they took the line right out of my mouth on the Crazy Rulers of the World about a very powerful visual psychic disincentive, and that's what you want to cause people to rethink about what they want to do with you. And some poor person is going to be the end result of that show and tell. And so it's a psychological thing. The fight begins and ends in your mind. It's not kata. It's not a lot of this stuff. The fight begins and ends in your mind. And as a matter of fact, if you really take a look at arts, there's only two things you ever have to learn in an art. Of all arts, you distill them down. There's two things that have to happen, and that is it. And ultimately, they're explained in a physical sense, but they have nothing to do with the physical body. It has everything to do with the mental body. And people just don't teach that. They teach rote memory of this thing, this kata, this thing, that thing. And you know what? It's never like that. One of the first battles I had was a machete to transition to a straight blade in the middle of a thunderstorm where the water came down and hit our group so hard we were washed down backwards with the enemy coming down with us. And I knew when I get to the bottom, I've got to organize myself so that they don't have a chance to get up. You know, who teaches that stuff, you know? And that's the kind of world where we find ourselves in. We're very realistic in Anjing Banfa. We fight in cars, we fight in aircraft, we fight everywhere, to include barbecuing and in the house and around everything. Fights will start. And use natural weaponry around you in many cases, you know. We've got videos of me having knockdown drag-out fights with some of my top students. And everybody watches while they're cooking, barbecuing, you know. And, pretty crazy. At one point, in that particular fight I'm referring to, my web belt got stuck on a riser of a sprinkler system. And where I just got the person where I wanted on the ground, I went to move, and I couldn't move because I was stuck on the sprinkler system. Now, how do you plan for that? You know? It's things like that that really do show the difference between a fluid, no bars held fight. Some of the things you get into, you know?
Yes. Peter, do you include any legal statutes, for your state regarding edge weapons in the scope of your training?
Most everything we use is illegal in California. I don't care what it is. And I talk about that, but yeah, to some degree. And depends on where they're going to go. They have to decide what they want to do. But in the short, my guys and girls are the weapon. They don't need a knife to defend themselves. They are the weapon. They can gather ammo and weapons along the way. They can make a DVD-ROM into a broken piece of plastic that can cut your throat the same way a knife can. No, they are the weapon.
And Peter, who are some of the most influential practitioners or instructors of Anjing Banfa?
Well, they're interesting enough. They're kind of polarized. Clearly, Kerry Sensei, you've met him. His job every day is super high-end security, and he has to deal with concerts and all kinds of craziness, and yet stay in a legal bound. And a lot of cops actually come learn from him about the facility and how, we learn how to take the facility out first. You'll learn to walk on the black side before you can walk on the white side. And Larry Ahlquist, Master Ahlquist, is also very influential, and he's the thinking man's executive. But he's taken out a lot of people, surprisingly enough. And of course, then myself, and there's some other ones. Matthias Sensei is an up-and-coming. Barry Sensei is up-and-coming. My two girls are very, very, very good at fighting. My oldest only knows black or white, either you're alive or dead, so she's not a good candidate for that part. And she'd disarm people and stab them in their eye. how do you raise girls like this, But so they're the influential ones. Gary Sensei, Master Lewis, and Master Alquist are probably the two better ones of the group from an overall standpoint, where other ones do, in fact, peak in certain areas.
And what do you hope for the future of your art?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know. I've agonized over it, but I don't know. And given what you know and I know, I don't know what's going to happen.
And what would you say your personal favorite blade is?
Oh, the one I showed you. Brand new top knives, slightly altered. The guy's got it for me, and it's everything I talk about. It's not a folder; it's a fixed blade. But darn, that blade is super, super awesome. The other one is the Jim Wagner's Reality blade. I'm very prone to the blending of a Tonto point with a talon, serrated talon, and have it all chisel edged, which means it has half the cutting resistance. I have a good story. One of my best friends is a big time shooter, and he was going to Africa, South Africa, and very, very bad place. And I said, "Thou shalt get a Wagner's Reality blade. Here's where you get it." And I showed him how to use it, basically. And so he was out hunting with his group. I met he's the hunter and they're the guides, and they wanted some pig for their meal back at the lodge where you go shoot what you want to eat. And he shot a hedgehog, and it went through the one hedgehog, and the round hit the second hedgehog and took him down, but didn't kill him. And so Steve walked out there, opened this Reality blade, and grabbed the tusk of this hog, which means it's controlling his head. And they said, "Hey, mate, you're not gonna be able to cut through the hide of a warthog. There's no knife in the world that can do that." And he reached in and he cut his throat, warthog's throat, like it was butter, like a hot knife going through butter. And they said, "What the hell kind of weapon is that?" And that's the Wagner Reality blade I carry. Got one on me right now. But I'm very fond of chisel edge knives because of the half cutting resistance, and of course the talon shape for arterial, the serrations to get it back out of a thoracic cavity, and a Tonto point has the least amount of forward impact resistance of any pointed blade, other than a pike. If you have a pike, then it has to only get over the cone. And once you pass the cone, you have very little friction between the walls and the tissue. But from a forward stabbing position, the Tonto blade is the blade of choice.
And Peter, where can people learn more about your art?
Well, we have awarriorsway.com on the web. And I've got a good YouTube channel. You've been over to it, but it's all linked from A Warrior's Way. I've got this new thing called Legendary Sensei Hood up and running. That's a pretty phenomenal site. They can go over there and see that. That's a monthly site. You send money on a monthly reoccurring basis, but you get access to everything I do, all the training, all the PDFs, all the videos, everything. The podcasts, you get it all in one spot, and you could spend the next 5 years in there and not see the same thing twice. I've spent many, many years creating a lot of content. And so that's one place, peterbrusso.com. You can go see that, which kind of gives a broader look at me, from engineering to entrepreneurialism to business to web building, that kind of stuff. And of course, pdws.biz, when you want to go take a look at the Fedger and how we're connected with the First Earth Battalion, the Goats movie. So those are probably the best ways of just Google my name and run around these sites looking at all the cool stuff we've got going on. There's a BrussoShop.com that has all the videos you can rent. You buy essentially one fee, and you can watch it. That's either download or otherwise. There's no term limit on any of that. So new stuff goes up there to include, I think we have blinding powder or some cool ninja stuff up there too as well. You don't get many classes. I think your kids even took that class, although we won't admit it, about blinding powder and how you can utilize that. But again, that goes all the way back to we are the weapon. You are the weapon. If you're at a restaurant, you've got salt and pepper, and most places have hot sauce. So you're in there. You can make essentially blinding powder that goes in the cup of your hand. And if you can't get out of that booth or out of that table to get out of there, then you're at least armed with something that's going to take somebody down pretty badly, going to blind them and give you a great opportunity to finish off the rest of that person anyway. So
now, Peter, for those that are interested in learning the physical techniques of the art, can you tell us about your DVD series and how somebody could use that to train at home?
Yeah, well, actually, there's a whole free series over on A Warrior's Way. We filmed for several years my Sunday class. And so it's a hodgepodge of all kinds of cool stuff. If I'm going to teach on a Sunday, I'm going to teach what I want to teach. I got selfish, but you can learn everything from choke cords. And you see us prepping for our big black belt tests where people have to go out at night and, stealthing and taking sentries out. We have a very unique blowgun that we have designed that shoots a nerf-ized blow dart. That took me 2 years to engineer that to get it the way I wanted, and we carry those at night so we can take sentries out in our night ops stuff. We train even the CIA out here from time to time. It's probably been agency-wise, the CIA's been here, and then we had some other federal groups here as well that we trained at night because they don't train like we do. Where somebody's trying to hunt you down. We've been on the Travel Channel recently with that particular hostage extraction game. The movie, the series is called Strange World, and I think we're episode 4 on that. And then, of course, we've been on the Heroes Channel. We talk more about the First Earth Battalion and that kind of stuff, but there's a lot of free stuff over on thewarriorsway.com, and then there's just a boatload of really, really good stuff in legendarysinsailor.com that they can learn long distance wise. And I mean, that was one of the specialties that I brought to the Corps, was how to design a series of training DVDs or CD-ROMs in those days that you never have to see the person. They're on Mars and you're on Earth. And that particular method of training in those DVDs are mimicked by our knife fighting series. Mimics very much the same way that I put together the Marine Corps martial arts training CD-ROMs that are now made in the video and streamed to every ship, every Marine unit in the whole fleet. And so basically I get a chance to touch 210,000 Marines a year with what I've done, which is pretty darn cool when you think about that. And we had lots of feedback coming out of both Iraq and Afghanistan on the MCMAP program, Marine Corps Martial Arts program, I'm the plank holder for. And so pretty cool stuff. But yeah, that's what they can do. We've been threatening to film the whole series, but that hasn't partaken and probably won't happen.
Now, Peter, you mentioned two different groups. I'd like to ask you about your affiliation with them. You just mentioned the Marine Corps Martial Arts program. Can you tell us what your relationship is to them?
Oh, sure. Several of my guys were in the Saddam, or the original Iraqi war, and then they won that, and then they went back for OIF 1, and Operation Iraqi Freedom 1, and my deployed Marine came back. I lost some, but not until OIF-2 did I lose the whole bunch. But so one of my guys, Grant Smiley, Master Grant Smiley, he asked me, he was stationed at Pendleton. He was also at that time a MCMAP black belt, but not a black belt instructor. They have two different ranks there. And he asked me, he says, "Hey, Sensei, do you know how to train artists really quick and getting up and running?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." The backstory to that is just briefly, I went from my first Taikai in 96, I think it was, Taikai being with Hatsumi Sensei, 34th Grandmaster Tagaku Reiru, and in flying across the United States, because it was in Hoboken that year, I asked Blackwood and his group, "Well, what did you learn last year?" They couldn't remember about 5% of it. And that bothered me a lot. And I got thinking, as an engineer instructor type person, I mean, when you drop in on a battlefield and want the guy next to you not to only remember 5% of boot camp, you want him at 105% of boot camp. He remembers everything. And so back there, technique after technique after technique was thrown at you. And I came away thinking, we teach all wrong, and here's what you want to do. And so basically I used Master Martin. He was going to give a seminar, a paid seminar. And I said, film your techniques, send them to me. And here's what we're going to do. And I'm going to make a DVD in a way that highlights and darkens the way people learn. As I kind of cracked the code on how people learn. And we're going to put these 6 segments in each particular technique, the 6 things that you've got to include. And I said, somebody signs up and pays their money, you send them the disc of exactly what you're going to teach. And here's the deal. When they get to the front door, they're going to be tested on that DVD. Those that pass with 80% or more get to come in and learn the rest that you're going to teach them, and those that didn't get turned away and we keep their money. That adds a little skin in the game on their part, a little pain. Well, so I took the same approach with the Corps, and I went down to Pendleton. I shot the Gray Belt series and the Tan Belt series, and I made 2 DVDs out of that the same way that I did with Martin's stuff, Master Martin's stuff. And I sent it to my staff sergeant at the time, and I said, "Don't believe a thing I say. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go give it to some officers to watch, and I want you to give it to some of the privates and the PFCs and the quarters and stuff to watch, and the barracks, and come back in 4 days and test them as if they had taken a 6 or 8 week course with you. Just test them. They've never seen you. They've never tested. They've never been trained by you. And use your honest-to-God Marine Corps passing your sheet to see if they pass or not. Everybody passed. The lowest score was 82. The highest score was 97 without ever stepping out on the battlefield or the training field, and without ever being taught by Marine Corps martial artists other than these videos. And I thought, wow, this is going to save a lot of time. And it turns out you end up at these seminars, you go in, you pass with 80%, let's say. Then in our case, Master Martin would tune you up, and then he'd throw in 50% more new stuff. Okay, so basically he's throwing 150% new stuff at you. In a year, when you retest them, they retain 105% of what they've gone through, as opposed to just 5%. And I said, man, what we're on to here, we could spin people up and teach them all kinds of stuff because the retention value is so high. Anyway, they sent it in. I sent it to the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, Quantico, and they turned right around and sued me. They got JAG involved. There was a big fight between me and JAG, and ultimately the head of Marine Corps Martial Arts Program paid me a visit, and he was so impressed with what I had done, and he was chartered to do that, but they hadn't been able to do it at all. They just didn't have the talent to do that, expertise, and so I agreed to produce their whole entire series that way. So I had like 30 Marines living at my house for 3 months, and we shot at Pendleton, and I got 2 systems, and I taught their combo person to cut video, do all the cutting and slicing and dicing for me to be able to do all the highlighting, lighting, and darkening, and all the texture stuff that I've got to do. I wrote all the music that went in there because you have copyright issues, and we produced them, and that's what the entire Marine Corps martial arts program is based off of now. Are these discs, or now are videos. So we got everybody on the same page, and as an artist, you can teach somebody one thing, and they can go teach it to somebody else, and they teach it to somebody else. By the time you see it again, it has 50% recognition from what you started with. And you say, what the heck happened? They're battling the same problem. But with these discs, everybody sees it firsthand, and it made a huge difference. So I'm a subject matter expert for the United States Marine Corps as a civilian. I'm allowed to go teach Marine Corps martial arts and get invited to places to go teach that in the Corps, but I never go teach them their own stuff. I teach them things that they've never seen before. Knife fighting, knife disarm, the defender, get them to start thinking out of the box a bit. But that is my relationship with the Corps.
And what about the First Earth Battalion? What's your relationship with that organization?
Well, Colonel Shannon and I knew each other early on when he came back from the war, before it was really the First Earth Battalion. He was the 173rd Airborne Commander, 2 tours in Vietnam, and I was across the border in Cambodia from him, and he had the same experience that I noticed. That some people are able to sense things where other ones have no talent in it at all. And he drove down the line to try to capture why one person on point would stop everybody, and Colonel Shannon would go up to the point guy and say, what are you seeing? And he says, I'm not seeing anything, but I feel over here 400 meters is an ambush that way. And he was more right than not. And other ones just let him right into ambushes. And so, again, he tried to capture that hunter-gatherer spirit that we have in us, but we're not connected with. He's trying to reconnect it. So basically, he got a chance to go look at all kinds of alternative stuff and drugs and new age movements and everything to roll into the Army. You might recall we used to have an Army slogan, be all you can be, be Army. And that was very prevalent in the late 70s, early 80s. That came directly from the First Earth Battalion, where he said, basically, we're not very cunning. And we have to be more cunning as an army. And cunning isn't something that they look for. Following orders is what they look for. So at any rate, I got involved with them at that time. And then the John Ronson stuff hit in 2004 with the Crazy Rulers of the World, Part 1, 2, and 3. I'm in Part 1, post Shannon. That became the groundwork for us being in Playboy magazine, of all things. And then that went the next stage into John Ronson's book, The Men Who Stare at Goats. And then the movie was based off of that, and George Clooney plays me in the movie in real life, and Colonel Shannon is played by Bridges. So that's kind of sort of how I was connected with the First Earth Battalion. And Shannon and I, we didn't talk all that much, but we were both on the same page with everything. And he said before he died, the only thing he never was and envies the fact that we are masters of martial arts. And I said, well, if you ever see me draw anything, you'll understand how I envy you the ability to draw, and convey an idea. Kind of a standing joke. So then, from that standpoint, we got on the Heroes channel because of my connection with Shannon and the First Earth Battalion, and trying to explain what it was that we were doing, and then we're on a various number of podcasts and shows. We were on Coast to Coast at one point, and then recently on the Travel Channel came out, and and shot for 2 days out here. They wanted to understand how you can use these paranormal skills in your daily operation, so to speak. And in this case, they picked a hostage extraction. And so we had to spin them up on, usually it takes weeks of training to get to that level, but I had to do it all in one night, one day. So he had his paranormal experience too. And he was just absolutely floored that he could do that with his mind. And a fight begins and ends in your mind. It doesn't start with your hands and your feet. And that's the biggest thing I try to push out there across martial artists. And that goes all the way back to your one question of, do you teach people how to get out of trouble as opposed to get into trouble? You know, how to mitigate that. And absolutely is a core feature of what we do. Goes back to Musashi, Japan's greatest swordsman. He wrote the book of 5 Rings, which we all read, part of required reading in my art. And in there he says, paint the picture you want your opponent to see. And that couldn't be more true than that. And so I've actually used it, shown people how to use it. I've talked my way in and out of high-level places, and they can watch me do this. But again, it's all manipulating a person's mind, basically. I know that sounds crazy, but it's absolutely true. We've all experienced it. You're driving down the highway, and all of a sudden you have to start braking because there's a car in another lane that's going to come into your lane, but they haven't turned on the turn signal or given any indication at all. You just know what's going to happen. You start braking, and sure enough, they slam into your lane, and you saved yourself. Well, how did that happen? Well, those are the types of things we teach, how to get more connected with that hunter-gatherer, go all the way back to First Earth Battalion stuff, but then roll it forward into the arts and of course, the core as well.
And Peter, is there anything else that you'd like to add, you know, as far as any aspect of training or anecdotes that you think are important for the reader?
Yeah, you know, make it as real as you can get it without crossing the line to injuring your students. My black belt tests are legendary. They're, by the way, up on a Warrior's Way too. You can watch them. It looks like we're hazing people, but everyone's different, and everyone is driving for a particular reason. In the 2008, I actually shot live rounds out of a weapon at my guys because I was going to be putting them out at nighttime in a very hostile area where there are people shot and killed every night. And they'd never heard a round go past their ear. They didn't know what it sounded like. And so I had to, as a sensei, I had to make sure that they not only, one, recognize that that's a round, and number two, but orient themselves appropriately to make the smallest visible target against that shooter. It appears like we're hazing them, but we're really not. We're actually adding in a very shocking and fun way because they don't know what's coming at them. Each test is different. Every one has been different. Up to some global ideas, mind you, clearly, but it has very little to do with martial arts per se. Is more going back to your one question of handling the real world. I've sent people on missions. I've sent them across the border. I've sent them into Oregon. They had so many minutes to get there, and they had to meet up with this person they never known before, and that person's going to hand them a packet of information and instructions you got to go do, and then they got to get back down to Anaheim by toes on the line at 5 p.m. 2 days later, and da-da-da-da. In the middle of that, they thought, well, this is a piece of cake, and so they camped out there, and I had one of my guys is in Air Force Reserve, and we flew helicopters in and attacked them in their tents from a helicopter. Now, how do you get the chance to do stuff like that? But we do it. And then we bring amazing people to come and share their stories. Recently, we have a Pearl Harbor survivor here. And then he joined the silent service where, you know, we lost 40% of our boats, submarines. And he comes and talks about that period of time and what they were thinking and captures the moment for them. Not unlike our 9/11 in many ways, but not nearly as bad as Pearl Harbor. So the art, my recommendation to people is make it as real as you can get it, because that's what they're going to be up against in the real world. And make sure they know how to act and how to manipulate other people's minds. And go all the way back to Musashi, paint the picture you want your opponent to see. So, yeah, make it real or go home.
Well, thank you very much, Peter.